Fatiha. السلام عليكم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله محمد سيد الأولين والآخرين مدد يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم دستور إن شاء الله طريقتنا الصحبة والخير في الجمعية. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. صدق الله العظيم. Allah Azze ve Celle'nin evliya kulları, onlara korku yok, üzüntü yok.
There is no fear and there is no sadness for the friends of Allah Almighty, the Awliyaullah.
Onlar Allah'ın himayesinde.
The Awliya are under the protection of Allah Almighty.
İnsanlara hidayet olsun.
And they are the means for people to be guided.
Evliyalar Allah'ın sevdiği kullar.
The friends of Allah Almighty, the Awliyaullah, are the servants of Allah Almighty, whom He Almighty Allah loves.
Emrini yerine getiren.
The Awliyaullah, the friends of Allah Almighty, are the ones who fulfill Allah Almighty's orders.
Kullardır ve büyük evliyalar var.
And apart from the Awliya, there are among them distinguished great Awliyas too.
Yani evliya olup da keramet sahibi olmak değildir.
To become an Awliya, a friend of Allah Almighty, does not mean that one must perform one must have miraculous powers.
Bazıları var, bazıları kerametleri büyük evliyalar var ama herkes de Allah'ın sevgili kulu olabilir.
Some Awliya do display their miraculous powers, some do not. There are great Awliya who have shown their miracles, but to become an Awliya, to become a friend of Allah Almighty, one does not need to perform miracles. Everyone can become an Awliya, everyone can become a friend of Allah Almighty.
Onun emrini yerine getiren, onlar Allah'ın sevdiği insanlardır.
To become an Awliya means to fulfill Allah Almighty's orders and to be a servant whom Allah Almighty loves.
Allah'ın istediği insanlar, sevdiği insanlar var.
And there are those people who do what Allah Almighty wants them to do. There are those people and those servants of Allah Almighty whom Allah Almighty loves.
Herkes de bazı insan nasıl evliya olacak diye Allah'ın emirlerini yerine getir.
And everyone can become one of them. People ask about how to become an Awliya. Simply fulfill Allah Almighty's orders and you will become a servant of Allah Almighty whom He loves.
Keramet değil de ecel keramet devamı tevfik diyor. En büyük keramet yaptığın şeyleri devam ettirmek.
To be an Awliya is not about performing miracles. To be an Awliya means to fulfill Allah Almighty's orders and to do what Allah Almighty wants you to do. And besides, the greatest miracle of all is continuity. To be persistent and steadfast in what one does.
Namaz kılıyorsun, namazını devam et hayat sonuna kadar.
If you perform your prayer, fulfill the duty of performing prayers up until the end of your life.
Yaptığın iyilikler daim olsun.
If you do something good, then be continuous in what you do.
Odur keramet.
That is the miracle.
Ama dediğimiz gibi çok büyük evliyalar var ki insanlara hidayete vesile olurlar.
Nevertheless, there are among the Awliya, distinguished Awliya, who have been the means of guidance to people.
Meşayihler, sahabeler.
They are the great sheikhs. They are, of course, the companions of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him.
Onların alimler, ulemalar.
Then there are the great true scholars, alims, ulemas.
Var öyle büyük evliyalar.
There are these distinguished great Awliya.
Bunlardan büyüklerinden birisi yani tabi Celaleddin Rumi Hazretleri.
And one of the most distinguished Awliya among them is of course Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi.
Mevlana Hazretleri o büyük, onun sayesinde milyonlarca insan faydalanmış.
Maulana Jalaluddin is a great awliya, and he has been the means for millions of people to be rightly guided towards the way of Allah Almighty.
Hidayete ermiş, İslam'a girmiş, Müslüman olup da yoldan çıkan insanlar yolda girmiş.
He has been the means for people to find the way of Allah Almighty, and he has been the means for people who may have gotten off track, may have committed sins, to find their way back to Allah Almighty.
Onun güzel nasihatlarıyla, öğütleriyle
Through his teachings and through his advices, he has been the means for people to enter Islam, and also for Muslims to find their way back to Allah Almighty.
bütün dünya Müslüman, gayrimüslim onu kabul ediyor.
Whether Muslim or non-Muslim, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi is a personality who is accepted throughout the entire world.
Onu şeylerini okuyor, nasihatlarını, kitaplarını
His books, his advices are read throughout the entire world.
okuyor. Tabii onun da vesilesiyle insanlar hakikati öğreniyorlar.
And still today, through his means, through the means of Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, people learn about the truth.
Hakikat da Allah Azze ve Celle'nin yolunda olmaktır.
And the truth is to follow the way of Allah Almighty.
Odur. Bazı insanlar Mevlana'yı başka türlü gösteriyorlar.
There are some people who try to portray or represent Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi in a different way.
Mevlana'nın o İslam'a girsinler.
But Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi's main target was to make people enter Islam.
İmana girsinler diye.
To make people believe and have faith.
Tövbe etsinler diye.
And to make people ask Allah Almighty for forgiveness.
Kapıyı açık bırakıyor.
And he opened the doors for everyone to enter the way of Allah Almighty.
Meşhur mübarek sözlerinden birisi.
And he kept the doors open to Allah Almighty. And there is this famous blessed saying of his.
Tövbeni bozsan gene gel.
If you have broken your oath, if you committed a sin, even though you repented, come nevertheless.
100 defa bozsan gene gel.
Even if you broke your oath 100 times, come again.
Gene gel. Bu kapı açıktır.
This door is open.
Onun için bu bir defa bir kötülük yapsa, hata yapsa, günah işlese kapı kapanmaz.
Even if you did something bad, even if you committed a sin, and even if you did it again and again, that door is never closed.
Kapı açıktır.
That door is open.
Sırf sen şu kötülüğü bırak.
Continue to come so that you will leave and abandon that badness.
Kötülüğün peşinden koşma. Kapı açıktır sana.
Don't run after your ego, but come to this door, regardless of.
O insan hata yapan insan hatasız insan olmaz.
There is no person without mistakes.
Bazı insanlar da nefislerine hakim olamıyorlar.
And there are some people who cannot control their egos.
Bir defa yaptım mı hadi artık ben günahkarım, ben artık bundan sonra hiçbir şeye beni kabul etmezler. Daha beter yapayım diye insanlar bazıları yapar.
And there are some people who may commit something wrong, commit a sin, and they consider themselves so bad, and they consider themselves so bad that they say, now I'm a sinner, now I will no longer be accepted, and then they say, I will now follow a bad way and do even things that are much worse. There are some people.
Öyle değil bu. Onun merhametinden dolayı.
But you must never think like that. That mercy of Allah Almighty is not restricted, and Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi is keeping that door open.
Sen gel, yani bir defa edersin, 2 defa, 5 defa, 10 defa, 100 defa.
Come nevertheless, even if you committed that sin 1 time, 2 times, 5 times, 10, 100 times, come nevertheless, come back.
En sonunda İnşallah bırakırsın şu kötülüğü, şu günahları.
And inshallah, by the permission of Allah Almighty, you will then one day leave that badness and stop doing it.
Onun bu güzel sözüdür. Bunun gibi binlerce nasihatı var orada.
These are the beautiful, famous words of Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, and there are yet thousands of advices that belong to him.
Yaptığı muazzam kitabında o mesnevi insanın hem insanın halini anlatıyor, insanlığın halini anlatıyor.
And in his great work, the Masnavi, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi describes humanity and the very nature of humanity in every detail.
İnce teferruatına göre onu gösteriyor insanlara.
And he shows people to themselves in every detail, in every regard.
Onun için bu büyük evliyalardandır.
And Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, he was one of those most distinguished awliya.
Tabii büyük evliyalar insanlara hidayet olsun diye çok güzel şeyler yapmış. Onlar
Those great awliyas were people who did enormous things in order for people to be guided to the right way.
bereketinde milyonlarca insan hidayete ermiş.
And it is through them that millions, and it is through Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi that millions of people have been guided towards the right way.
Dine girmiş.
They have entered the religion of Islam.
Dinde Müslüman olan da tövbe etmiş.
And Muslims have, if they have gotten off track and committed a sin, they have repented and asked Allah Almighty for forgiveness through their means.
Günahlarından arınmış.
And they have purified themselves from their sins.
Temiz olarak Allah huzuruna onun vasıtasıyla geçmiş.
And they have come to Allah Almighty's divine presence in a clean state through their means.
Onların da faziletleri ona da yazılmıştır.
And those people who have been rightly guided, their rewards and their blessings will also be recorded on Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi's behalf, on those people who have been who have been the means for these people to find the right way to Allah Almighty. They will also get the share of their rewards in their records.
Allah onların bereketi üzerimize olsun.
May the blessings of those awliya be on us.
O güzel halleri, o güzel sözleri bize de olsun inşallah.
May their beautiful words have an impact on us too.
Allah tawfik. El Fatiha.